Hey everybody, before we get into today's story, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about my go-to horror app, Chilling. Chilling is a great all-in-one spot to get your daily dose of horror with over 700 ad-free stories, with every spooky genre that you can think of, all just waiting for you to listen to them. Chilling has also just released a few major updates for the platform as well, such as the ability to download stories for offline listening, which is always nice, and being able to change the narration speed for your story. Both of these updates allow you to customize your horror experience even more. And of course, Chilling still offers their one-of-a-kind ambient menu, allowing you to set the background ambience to your liking. Really an overall game changer. Chilling offers a free trial to test things out, and it's only $2.99 a month after that. Chilling is also running a PS5 giveaway plus 4 additional games, and a 1-year pass to PlayStation Plus. To enter, start a free trial or be a subscriber on the app, and fill out the feedback form. It's pretty easy, really. Links for the app and the giveaway will be in the description below. A big thanks again to Chilling. Now, let us get into today's story. This time of year, trouble lurks in the shadow of my graveyard. It's because of the winter holidays, you see. Bereaved families come to visit. Their outpouring of emotion gets the locals all riled up, and then anyone caught here after sundown is liable to have an encounter. That's what happened with poor Mrs. O'Reilly. I spotted her through the window of my shack, wandering past a row of headstones from the 90s. There was a dry winter breeze and mist so thick that you couldn't see your own shoes. Definitely not a night you wanted to get stuck outside. I pulled on my raincoat and gloves and caught up to her on the flank of a steep hill, close to a headstone dated October 13th, 1997. "Good evening," I said. She shrieked and spun around. I leaned back. "Didn't mean to startle you. I'm Sean, the groundskeeper here." She put a hand to her chest and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You scared the absolute bejesus out of me." "My apologies." Wind hissed through the crooked branches of skeletal trees on either side of us. I looked around and then said, "That breeze must be cutting you to the bone. What are you doing out here at this hour?" "Well, I'm afraid that I lost my bearings. I can't even remember which way I came." She whipped her head from side to side. "It feels like I've been going in circles. I really need to get home to my daughter. She must be worried sick." I had to get the lady inside before the situation became dangerous. "Not to worry, come with me and I'll take you over to the gate." "Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you, mister." Her voice trailed off, waiting for me to fill in the rest. "Donnelly, but you can call me Sean." I tipped my cap. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Donnelly." The path curved in a lazy S shape. It was a narrow lane with brambles and bushes to the left and a row of headstones on the right. "How long have you worked here?" she asked and then breathed into her cupped hands. "Coming up on 25 years. "And does it ever bother you?" "What?" She gestured toward a nearby headstone. "Being so close to I would imagine you've had a few frights over the years." "Only when I get my paycheck." She chuckled. "It's funny. I never thought of myself as superstitious. But as soon as the sun went down, I started picturing corpses springing out of their graves. I half expected a rotted hand to snatch my ankle." "When that happens, it's best to bash him with a shovel. Usually sends him right back to sleep." She stared at me. Kidding. "Oh," she forced a laugh. "Of course." Up ahead, toward the end of a slope, lay my cabin. "Mr. Donnelly, is it much farther?" she asked apprehensively. She had realized that we weren't headed for the gate. "I really should be getting home." The gate's locked and my keys are inside. It won't be but a moment grabbing them. And come on in, Mary. It'll give you a chance to heat up. I'd prefer Mrs. O'Reilly. She made a sour face. Wait, how do you know my name is Mary? I cleared my throat and said, Oh, you must have mentioned it at the top of the hill. I kicked my feet clean against the welcome mat and quickly ushered her through the door. My shack was built around a single room which doubled as a lounge and kitchen. Above our heads, moss flapped around a bare bulb. I gestured toward a cushioned armchair next to the fireplace and said, Have a seat and get that chill out of your bones. You're a true gentleman. I almost caught my death out there. Well, you're in the best place for it, she chuckled. Oh yes, very good. After whipping off my coat, I plopped down at the table and slid on my reading glasses. Do you have any children, Mr. Donnelly? 2 sons, both grown and still asking for money. I rummaged through the desk drawers. Mr. Donnelly, I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but I really am in a hurry. Oh, of course. Give me just a moment and I'll dig out those keys. They're around here somewhere. I propped an iPad up on the table. What on earth is that thing? She asked. Oh, it's a computer. I use it for my day-to-day tasks. It was a bloody nightmare to get grips with, but it's easier than keeping track of endless paperwork. Ah, she said in a way that indicated she hadn't really understood. For the next few minutes, I wrestled with the device. Something about mandatory updates. Mr. Donnelly, it's been a real pleasure, but I would really like to. It won't be a minute. Mr. Donnelly, she said sharply. The bare bulb brightened and dimmed. To my left, the window above the sink rattled in its housing. I'm grateful for your hospitality, but my daughter is expecting me home. I'd appreciate it if you could take me to the exit now. Outside, the wind picked up, and rain blew sideways against the shack, which suddenly felt very, very cramped. My lips turned bone dry. I'd expected to have things ready by now. Of course, but how about a cup of tea first? No, she said firmly. I've waited long enough. I had hoped you'd be concerned with seeing me home, but clearly you're more preoccupied with your little... She fumbled for the right word. Gizmo. Around the room, furniture began to scrape roughly across the floor, and the shadows thrown by the fire became long and distorted. I quietly said, If you could just... She stood from the chair. No, show me to the exit right now. Dang iPad still wouldn't work. I had planned to have everything laid out by now. The next part was so much simpler with visual aids. As Mrs. O'Reilly stepped forward, the air became a little too raw, a little too bitter, and the suffocating space filled with the sickening scent of decay. I said, Oh, just finishing some paperwork, then I'll get you home to Molly. She screwed up her face. Home to... How did you... Who told you? Suddenly my breath began misting up and the window had frosted over. Mr. Donnelly, what is going on? Her voice didn't come from her mouth anymore. It came from all around the room. As she took another step forward, yellow fluid seeped out of her ear onto the floorboards, and blood bubbled from her mouth. Tell me how you know about Molly. A jagged portion of collarbone jutted from her neck, and her left shoulder twisted sideways. How did you know my name? Now I could see gray brain matter through a fracture in her skull. To heck with the iPad, I thought. We'll do this the old-fashioned way. At the far side of the room, the door to my bedroom stood open. I made a desperate break for it. Tell me what's going on, she screamed, and as she did throughout the shack, wooden cupboards crashed open and shut, porcelain plates exploded, and metal pot drums rolled across the counter. I closed and locked the door behind me, even though doing so offered zero protection. I reached beneath the bed and pulled out a photo album, my stiff joints creaking with age. As I frantically flicked through the pages, the door burst open. There was no Mrs. O'Reilly anymore, just disturbing riplets of human features, a swollen eye, a broken mouth, and shattered legs that looked as though they could barely support the warped figure. The entity seeped into the room, radiating malevolence, radiating hatred. A smell came with it, a putrid stench of death that engulfed both my nostrils and made me lightheaded. I held up the album and shouted, "Your daughter's perfectly safe, look." I stood, the bones in my spine cracking, and I pushed out the hefty book. "I promise that I'll explain everything. There's no reason to panic." The photo showed a teenage girl at school, celebrating her birthday, acting in a school play. I could almost make out Mrs. O'Reilly's face as she said, "That's not Molly." There was profound anger in the voice. Gasping for air, I said, "It is. It's Molly all grown up." "Impossible." Plaster peeled off the walls. "You're lying. Molly, she's 9 years old." "No, she was 9 years old the day that you died." Fragments of Mrs. O'Reilly reemerged, but her lifeless features twitched in a way that made me uncertain whether the danger had passed. I said, "It happened years ago. A car accident. You were killed, but your family survived. I've got the article right here, look." Pasted onto the next page was a newspaper clipping which read, "Mother of one killed in motor collision. The time of the accident was 12:34, October 13th, 1997. I remember a crash." It wasn't a statement, more like a question. The entity became a severely injured Mrs. O'Reilly again. "I remember looking up at a dashboard with glass in my hair." "I'm afraid that's the accident which ended your life, Mrs. O'Reilly. It says so right here." She furiously shook her head and turned away, her chest moving up and down in staggered heaves. "No, no!" A nearby shelf collapsed, sending books scattering across the floor. "Just read this, please." As she reluctantly studied the article, I saw her struggle to accept the horrifying revelation. "This is Molly," I said, flicking through the album. The girl in the pictures went from teen to young adult to university graduate. "Surely you see the resemblance. Try to remember, Mrs. O'Reilly." From her expression, it was clear that, little by little, she was beginning to believe me. She swallowed a lump in her throat. "My daughter graduated." "First in the family," I said. "She became a nurse." "Where is she now, and my husband? What happened to him?" "Come with me." I led her back into the lounge where she hovered next to the fireplace. I loaded an obituary from a local news site on the iPad. 11 after the accident, your husband took a heart attack and passed on at age 42. A look of immense grief flashed across her face. For a moment, the roof and all my furniture clattered. I said, "Molly took it hard. In the end, she decided to leave Ireland. Too many bad memories, I imagine. She immigrated to Australia." I loaded pictures of Molly on the iPad and turned it towards Mrs. O'Reilly, who now resembled her former, uninjured self. Over there, she met a Welsh fella, a bricklayer, makes good money. The two of them got hitched and have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. A family photo done by the beach appeared on the screen. Mrs. O'Reilly put a hand to her mouth, her eyes swelling with tears. "The little girl looks so like Molly," she said, wistfully studying the image. "She surely does, and you'll never guess what they named her." Mrs. O'Reilly's eyes found mine. Mary. She closed her eyes and smiled. Gently, she placed a hand over her heart and then, in a choked-up voice, said, "Is there any way that I could meet them? Perhaps you might bring my family here." "Oh, I sincerely wish that I could," I replied. "But the only reason we're really having this conversation is because I spent half my life surrounded by the dead. Most folks wouldn't even notice you, unless you caused trouble again, that is. Although I would kindly ask for you to refrain from doing that." I gestured around the room, toward my furniture, most of which was either broken or flipped upside down. "Of course," she said, her tone a little apologetic. I flicked through the photos again, giving her ample time to study each one. Outside, the wind, soft and cold, stirred the branches that grew against the roof. "So, Mr. Donnelly, what happens now?" "Well, that's up to you. A lot of spirits who died under tragic circumstances tend to hang about. They feel like they've got unfinished business and can't move on, and their souls linger here, only vaguely aware of their surroundings until they pull themselves together, like you just did, up by your headstone. When spirits awaken after a long time, they're a little disoriented, and those who get distressed become troublesome. That's where I come in to help calm them down. Some hang on about until they're confident their loved ones are going to be okay. Others refuse to move on until everyone they knew in life has too. That decision is entirely yours." "You say move on. What does that mean exactly?" Tears slid down her cheeks. "Afraid I haven't the foggiest. I'm just the groundskeeper. I keep things tidy on this side. Whatever happens next is above my pay grade." Already, her body had begun to fade. I could see the crackle of the fire behind her through her. She leaned forward like an eager child about to share a great secret. "Thank you, Sean. I greatly appreciate your help." "It was my pleasure, Mrs. O'Reilly." "Please, call me Mary." I smiled. She said, "I hope we meet again someday." "I'll look forward to it." I replied and gave her a nod. And with that, she was gone.